Hi guys, welcome back to another Screencastify on Chapter 13. Today we're focusing on Chapter 13.4. It's a little bit longer because it kind of takes into consideration a lot of that food web, food chain stuff, and really getting into the nitty-gritties of interactions within our ecosystems. So our food web, food chain vocab. Obviously, we want to start with food chain. It's a model that links organisms by their feeding behaviors. Carnivore is an organism that obtains energy by only eating other animals. Carnivores think mostly lions, certain types of bears. These are usually your top predators. Detritivores are organisms that only eat dead matter, and specialists are consumers that eat only one type of organism. There's very few specialists in our current ecosystem that we are in right now. Most of them are detritivores eating just that dead matter. Trophic level is the level of nourishment passed within the food chain. Herbivores only eat plants, and omnivores eat both plant and animal. Most humans are omnivores. We eat both plant and animal, whether you like to admit that you do or not. Unless you are a vegetarian or a vegan, then you are a herbivore. Then we have decomposer. A decomposer is a specialized detritivore that's responsible for breaking down organic matter into smaller compounds and then returns those nutrients back into the ecosystem through the soil. We have a generalist, which is the opposite of a specialist. They are species that do not rely on a single source of prey. Humans are generalists. We do not rely on one type of food to help us survive the rest of our lives. I don't know very many people that could survive just off of cow. Yes, steak is delicious, but you would not be able to eat cow product breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day without including anything else. That means no carbs, no grains, no eggs, no chicken, nothing. So we are generalists. And FoodWeb is a model that shows the complex networking of feeding relationships within an ecosystem. So food chains are typically linear. This one is showing it circular. So food webs is a model that food chains, is a model that shows the sequence of feeding relationships. It's the easiest way to look at how energy is flowing through the ecosystem. And rather than describe every potential possible relationship, the model of a chain only follows the connection between one single producer through a single set of consumers through an ecosystem. So here we have our sun. That is your main source of energy. Comes down to the producer, the grass. When water comes in, grass grows. The grasshopper. So you'll notice that the arrows move in the direction of consumption or of energy transfer. So we always like to word the arrows as eaten by. So grass is eaten by the grasshopper. The grasshopper is eaten by the frog, which is eaten by the snake, which is eaten by the hawk. The hawk, in this case, is our final consumer that gets decomposed and returned back into the soil for the producer's nutrients to start the cycle all over again. So we're looking at the flow of energy through one path of energy consumption. There are many types of consumers. We have herbivores that only eat plants, carnivores that only eat meat, omnivores that eat both plants and animals, detritivores that eat dead organic matter, and decomposers that break down organic matter into smaller compounds. But why does it matter? Why do we care? That's pretty much the number one question that most people ask is like, why does it matter? Food chains are very helpful for describing feeding relationships among extremely selective eaters known as specialists. And these help environmental biologists learn when and where to reintroduce endangered species. Specialists are consumers that particularly eat one specific organism or feed on very small number of organisms. They are sensitive to change, especially in the availability of their prey. So we have to monitor where are they being released in relation to their prey to help the population survive. Most organisms do not rely on one food source. These are called generalists. We have a very varying diet. We as humans are generalists. We have a varying diet. We eat everything from plant-based products all the way up to meat and specialized meats. Trophic levels is the level of nourishment at the chain. So generally they are in the order that the producers are on the bottom. Then you have your primary consumers or your herbivores. Your secondary consumer is usually your carnivore and omnivore. Your tertiary consumers, and you go all the way up to your apex predator, which is at the top. So we look at this as a pyramid because the wider the band that you're in, the more energy you have. Every time you go up the trophic level, you are losing 10% of the energy. Because your body needs the energy too. So our producers here, our blue band down here, our producers, they get 100% of the energy because they're making their own energy. They get eaten by herbivores and omnivores. They can only pass on 10% of their energy. So that second trophic level, really, your primary consumer is only gaining 10% of your energy. Your carnivores at your secondary consumer are getting 1% of that original energy. Your secondary consumers above that are 0.1%, and your apex predators are only getting about 0.01% of the initial energy created. That's why having a varying diet that is high in fruits and vegetables is really good for you because you're actually gaining most of your energy at that level. If you are eating a steak for dinner, that cow ate the grass, so that cow had 10% of that energy, that original energy, but now you're only getting 1% of the original energy. So that's why having a varying diet of both fruits, vegetables, and meats is very good for us because we need the energy from the producers, but we also need the nutrients that are in the meat as well. Not saying that there's anything wrong with not eating meat. I have many family members that are vegan and are vegetarian. So, I mean, obviously that's the best type of diet. But we also do gain a lot of nutrients from meat. The food web, on the other hand, shows the complex interaction of what an actual ecosystem would look like. Generalists may be involved in one food chain or many food chains, depending on which link that they are. In turn, each organism in that food chain is a part of another food chain. And if you think of it like kind of in an actuality standpoint, so as a result, scientists are able to develop a food web, which shows all of your producers, what herbivores they get consumed by. And the arrows mean the same thing. So this lavender is eaten by the butterfly, that is eaten by the dragonfly, which is eaten by the thirst, which is eaten by the eagle. Okay, so, or we can take the lavender to the butterfly, to the frog, to the python, to the eagle. So it's just showing all of the complex interactions and all of the food chains that could be put together into one food web. When we come back from break, you guys are going to have a little bit of a worksheet on food webs and food chains, just to kind of help you get that information down. We're definitely not done with food web, food chain yet. So food webs are models that show the complex networking of feeding relationships and flow within an ecosystem, and the flow of energy that are within and sometimes even beyond the ecosystem. At each link of the food web, some energy is stored within the ecosystem, while 10% of it can get passed on into the environment. Looking at a coral reef, they are known as the rainforest of the sea. They are the place for the most abundant life in the ocean. Think Finding Nemo. Think of how many different types of fish live in those coral reefs. So you have your coral reef, which the coral reef itself is made of producers and animals. So that's why you have some arrows that go to and from. So the coral reef is eaten by the sea slug, which is eaten by the octopus, which is eaten by the shark, and so on and so forth. So coral reefs are living things, and some of them do act as animals, some do act as plant. So that's why we have arrows that go in both ways. The stability of a food web depends on the presence of the producer. The more producers, the more stable your food web is. They form the base of the food web. Without a producer, you cannot have a stable food web. Organisms may have multiple feeding relationships within that food web. The difference is the trophic level and how much energy is absorbed at each level, but food webs really do show the complexity of generalists in our ecosystems. All right, that's it for food web food chain. If you guys have questions, just email me. Your assignment is just listen to this, obviously, take your notes and be working on your project. When you come back from break, you'll have that first day, so either Monday, blue day, or Tuesday, white day, to work on your project. But you will get a food web food chain activity to do Thursday, blue day, Friday, white day, just to kind of bring this all back. But your projects will be due Thursday and Friday, depending on what day I have you. So let me know if you guys have any questions. And have a great and well-deserved April break. You guys deserve this.